Hey everybody, my name is Nicholas Walker and I've decided to do the second prompt for the 7th and final genetic exam video. So what we're looking at is a DNA fingerprinting analysis model in which I created based on the famous board game Clue. So if you don't know much about Clue, Clue is a murder mystery drama in which you're trying to figure out who the killer is as well as what the murder weapon is and where did the murder occur. So in this situation, Miss White and Colonel Mustard are the parents of Professor Plum and Mrs. Peacock, in which Mr. Green is the male butler and Mrs. Scarlet is the maid of the household. So in this situation, Mrs. Scarlet found Mr. Green dead in the hallway along with a revolver found at the crime scene. So Mrs. Scarlet is the witness in this situation. So we know where the murder happened and how the murder happened. We want to look at the VNTR locuses in which that'll help us figure out who the killer is. So based on the evidence in locus 1, both alleles match exactly with suspect 1, 3, and 5. So in which Miss White, Professor Plum, and Miss Scarlet are looking suspicious in this locus, whereas the victim, suspect 2, and suspect 4 do not match with the evidence. So we can go ahead and say that Mr. Green, Colonel Mustard, and Mrs. Peacock are all safe because they do not match with the evidence. And this leaves us with Miss White, Professor Plum, and Miss Scarlet with 3 suspects left. So we look in locus 2, in which the evidence matches with the victim and suspect 3. But we know from locus 1 that suspect 2, 4, and the victim are all safe. But in locus 2, we see that suspect 1 and 5 are now safe because they do not match with the evidence. So we can say that Miss Scarlet and Mrs. White are also safe. So this leaves us with Professor Plum. And this is consistent in that Professor Plum matches exactly with the evidence in locus 2 and locus 1. So we can safely say that Professor Plum is in fact the killer. So based on the biological parents, S1 is Miss White, and then S2 is Colonel Mustard, and then of course S3 is Professor Plum, and then Miss Peacock, we can see that Colonel Mustard gives this allele to Professor Plum, and then we see that Miss White gives this allele to Professor Plum as well. And then for Miss Peacock, we see that she gets this allele from Colonel Mustard, and then she gets this allele from Miss White. So in which that is consistent in locus 1. It is also consistent in locus 2 in the fact that Professor Plum gets this allele from Colonel Mustard, and then Professor Plum also gets this allele from Miss White. And Mrs. Peacock gets this allele from Mrs. White, and then she gets this allele from S2, which is Colonel Mustard. So that is also consistent too. And in my description of the YouTube video, I also found a website and cited a website that further explains this board game. But I thank you very much for listening and tuning in.